The evolution of work has accelerated as a result of the pandemic, causing tons of change. How will the future of work impact the cities we live in? This is Scott Gann with the Bold Cities Project, highlighting innovations shaping our cities. COVID shocked the world, impacting almost every area of our lives. There's been a lot of coverage about how the virus has impacted us now. So let's take a look and investigate how work specifically will change in the years to come. The workforce was seriously impacted when in-person activities were deemed to be unsafe for public health. Non-essential workers were told to stay at home, shifting many to completely virtual work for a time. Now that the world is starting to open back up, companies are looking for the best path forward. Experts believe that some combination of in-person and virtual work will be the new normal. However, this balance could vary greatly by industry, company, and even employees. For example, restaurant and retail, service, and the healthcare industry are just some examples of fields that rely heavily on in-person interaction. The fields I listed scored the highest on consulting firm McKinsey's overall physical proximity score. This means their model of work has been the most disrupted by the pandemic, but may largely remain the same since they are so interaction dependent. Some employees may prefer more in-person work because of their personality or because of their role. Young professionals could stand to benefit from learning in the office earlier in their career. I'm personally eager to exchange virtual meetings and screen sharing for interacting with teammates and mentors in person. The vast majority of people have positive experiences with flexible remote work. 73% of employees want flexible remote work options to stay, and 83% of workers prefer the hybrid work model. But the nuances of working from home are interesting to consider. Is working from home more sustainable? Well, it's complicated. Of course, eliminating the commute reduces our impact on the road and on air quality, but we end up using energy at home that would not have been used if we were in the office. CO2 emissions from transportation dropped 15% during the year after the pandemic. And during the first 3 months of the pandemic, energy sales fell 11% in the commercial sector, while rising 8% in the residential sector. According to the International Energy Agency, there was an overall reduction in average CO2 emissions. Cutting out the driving commute is a big savings, but for those who walk, bike, or take transit, there may actually be a net increase of CO2 emissions by working from home. Additionally, a study done by WSP UK showed that if the average employee worked at home year-round, they would produce around 80% more than an office worker. This is primarily because the energy expended to keep homes warm during the cooler months has a greater impact than the commute to work. Although working from home may work logistically well for many people, there are some conditions that might make it less than ideal. As more people start to occupy apartments and condos over single-family homes, finding a workspace at home becomes increasingly difficult. Aside from needing adequate space for working, internet and office supplies are also crucial elements that may be lacking for some. 1 out of every 10 employees don't have adequate internet connections to do their job from home, and 35% of Americans lack fast enough internet service to support viable video calls. And 42% of employees lack essential office supplies at home. There's also something to be said for the tangible separation between work and home life. 37% of workers miss having a daily routine tied to going to the office, and 64% miss fewer distractions at the office compared to working from home, like noise and household responsibilities. After considering these different aspects of working from home, what could the modern office look like? The office market certainly took a big hit during the pandemic, with the value of office towers declining 25% in New York, resulting in a $1 billion loss in property tax revenue. Does this mark the start of a huge exodus from the office? A McKinsey survey found that office space managers expect a 36% increase in work time outside their offices, meaning that companies would need less office space. A survey of 248 U.S. chief operating officers found that 1/3 plan to reduce office space in the coming years as leases expire. But that's only part of the story. In one study, 56% of businesses expect to need more office space. This anticipation of growth may be a combination of increasing workforces, opening satellite campuses, and providing more room for social distancing of spaces. Many offices are expected to be retrofitted in the near future, ranging from minor adjustments to completely changing the function of the space. One way to look at different types of work we do is to separate activities into two categories: heads down and heads up. Heads down activities are personal tasks that are completed individually. Heads up activities are interactive tasks that require team members to work together, including meetings, brainstorming, and collaborating. Since heads down activities can be completed more easily remotely, offices may move to prioritize collaborative spaces for heads up activities that must take place in person. Other office improvements include hot desks that can be reserved for transient employees and rooms equipped to handle in-person and virtual team members and guests. This integrated video conferencing approach was implemented by the University of Florida during its hybrid return to on-campus learning in a program called HiFlex. Cameras and large TVs were set up in the classrooms to facilitate interaction between the professor, in-person students, and virtual students. In a CBRE study, 86% of respondents see flexible office space as a key component of their future real estate strategies. And 66% of business decision makers are considering redesigning physical spaces to better accommodate hybrid work environments. Many offices may be converted to other uses to accommodate the changing landscape of the real estate market. A growing trend has become the transition of office buildings to residential ones. It is typically less expensive than demolishing and constructing anew, and provides a better alternative environmentally. While this strategy is not the solution for all affordable housing, it could certainly make an impact on that front. In theory, changing the use of an office building may make perfect sense, but it's easier said than done. It may require significant capital investment and zoning changes. Suburban office parks are less likely to pan out as residential conversions since they don't have the advantage of adjacent amenities. In general, apartments earn less than offices, so the market has to be right for residential conversion to take place. It could cost an estimated $100,000 per apartment to renovate, with much of the capital going towards the addition of necessary plumbing, electrical, and ventilation. For this reason, co-living with smaller rooms and shared bathrooms may be more cost-effective by working more favorably with the existing building orientation of offices. Central business districts could add a greater mix of uses with the retrofitting of office towers to become residential, making the neighborhood more active throughout the day rather than being busy simply 9 to 5. Chintan Ravishya, a city planning and design leader at Arup, says this is the way forward for CBDs to become more resilient in the future. Coworking has been a growing phenomenon that might have been accelerated by the pandemic. It's basically the idea of working in a shared working space as an individual or remote worker, capitalizing on the opportunity to network and create a sense of community. The Global Coworking Growth Study estimated that approximately 5 million people will be working from coworking spaces by 2024, an increase of 158% compared to 2020. This could be accelerated by 2/3 of companies moving towards flexible workspaces and workplace mobility programs. Interestingly, 50% of workers say they miss the commute. Why is that? Maybe it's because 31% say they call mom less often without their commute. Maybe it's because they miss the separation between home and work life. But staying in our slippers for remote work at home has allowed 48% to catch up on sleep and 35% to make more time for exercise and spend more time with their kids. Carbon dioxide emissions from transportation dropped 15% last year as people hunkered down at home. And traffic congestion during rush hour significantly dropped during lockdown. So now that workers have a taste of what it's like to skip the commute, an average of 27 minutes each way, how will their perspective change? How will they prioritize living closer to the office? Do they value their neighborhood more than they did pre-pandemic? The advent of hybrid work and flexible schedules could provide a huge advantage for traffic engineers when it comes to planning roadways. Instead of designing for the huge increase in demand at rush hour, trips could be more evenly distributed throughout the day and throughout the week to minimize congestion. This may slow or even end highway expansion and prompt the change of parking lots to become other uses. During the pandemic, many parents wound up working remotely from home and parenting at the same time. While it may have provided opportunities to connect more with their kids, it may have also negatively impacted their work while trying to balance both big responsibilities. So with remote work here to stay in varying capacities, how will parenting change? Some flexible work policies may require parents to make plans to take care of their kids in order to ensure that their role as a parent doesn't impact their work at home. In those cases, will companies offer stipends to pay for childcare, opt to provide it themselves, or allow parents more flexible hours? Remote work means you could work wherever you want. If your office is in New York, you could still work from Hawaii. So some employees are considering moving far away from their places of work to achieve other goals they may have outside of their career. However, it's not quite that simple. Unless companies allow their employees to go fully virtual, the in-person component of the job would still require them to be in an office from time to time at least. Some companies like Facebook are even reflecting employees' place of residences with adjusted salaries as they have begun to move away from Silicon Valley. The shift of power towards employees deciding where they want to work may be a contributing factor to companies shifting towards more regional offices closer to their employees rather than having fewer large corporate headquarters. Staying home all day, even if you're meeting with your coworkers virtually, minimizes the opportunities for and impact of social connection. Team isolation, measured by a lack of communication with our distant network, spiked during lockdown in studies of New Zealand and South Korea. In a study on the strength of bonds between our close networks and distant networks show that our relationships with coworkers that aren't on our immediate teams took a hit. 2/3 of UK-based remote workers felt disconnected from their colleagues, with half saying this sense of disconnection was having a negative impact on how they viewed their jobs, and a third saying it's having a negative impact on their mental health. Many workers miss in-person interactions, particularly those side conversations we have. So workers have recognized how much they miss being in the office and participating in their workplace community. 67% of workers want more in-person work or collaboration post-pandemic. 73% miss socializing in person, and 87% say the office is important for collaborating with team members and building relationships. To wrap up this video, it's clear that the future of work will be different. The office isn't dead, but it will have a new look. Hopefully, all of these changes will be better for people, businesses, and the places that we live. Thanks for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, like and share this video if you liked what you saw, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. God bless.